Welcome to Blueprint to Heal. Today I'm really excited to have Lisa Katz. I've been following you for years. And as I just told you, I feel like I know you. I feel like I know you so well that if we were in the same venue, it doesn't matter if it's reciprocal. I just feel like I would want to, grab you in a corner and give you a big hug. And, it's so nice to meet you and to be able to have this conversation today. So thank you for coming on.
Thank you so much for having me. I'm so honored to be here today, and I'm so excited to chat with you. And thank you for saying all that. That makes me feel good, and I like to share my story. I like to help others, and so if that translates into people feeling like they know me, then that's a good thing.
Well, you have a big story. And I think that I started following you because even though I don't have a child with autism, it's something that interests me a lot. Why, how can we help these, used to be kids, they're now adults. Like, what can we do to help them? And I know that you have a child with autism.
I
A-
do.
And, for me, like you were always one of those people that was speaking out. So I think that's how I first started following you. And originally we were going to talk about skincare stuff,
Mhm.
but I love this new thing that you're doing that you've been doing for years, but now you're going to be offering to other people. So why don't you tell us a little bit about what you're doing right now?
Okay. Well, so let me just start back a little bit. So I actually have 22-year-old triplet boys, and one of the triplets has very severe nonverbal autism. He's 22. So I think it's 11 or 12 years ago, I heard of something called the GAPS diet, which is the gut and psychology syndrome diet by Dr. Natasha, is it McBride or
I
what's her
think
last
it's McBride.
McBride. I think it's Natasha
Yeah.
McBride. It's the gut and psychology. It's GAPS. It's known as GAPS. So I loosely put my son on the GAPS diet. It was a little complicated to me and a little hard. But basically, I overhauled his diet and started realizing that there is so much more that we can be doing as autism parents or just as anybody that is living on this planet Earth to help our bodies. And one of the things that I realized as we were going through this and as I was developing my own awareness of my autoimmune disorders, and I had another son who was getting diagnosed with pandas, and thank goodness we had a really good psychiatrist at the time that encouraged us to go gluten free. And so shortly after I had done the diet change with Brandon, I started doing it for more of us in the family. So over the years, I have really seen the connection of what happens when you start taking out the processed junk and you start substituting it with real food. For myself, I've reversed two autoimmune disorders. I had PCOS and I had Raynaud's, and both of them were reversed. And for my other family members, what has happened as is that it has set the foundation for healing. It set the foundation for healing. Now there are people who remove gluten and casein, which is a part of what's in milk, so dairy. So if you remove gluten and casein, there is a very small percentage of people that their kid will start talking. So didn't happen here. And what I want to point out is a very small percentage.
Right.
But what did happen here when we changed things for him is we noticed he was calmer. We noticed he went to bed at night easier. He wasn't up for like an hour or so trying to settle his body down. So we just noticed it wasn't a huge change. So please hear, people, I see people in groups talking about how, my son's been gluten free and dairy free, and I'm not noticing any difference. There may not be a huge difference, but the thing is, when you remove the foods that are known to cause inflammation, only good things can happen from there.
Right.
You're not, we don't have a deficiency in gluten where we have to have gluten or our bodies won't survive. And dairy has found to be very inflammatory for a large percentage of people. Even though, like, we're brought up, like, oh, drink your milk, it's going to make your bones strong. But a lot of people cannot handle dairy. So, over the years,
So before you go on, what is your philosophy on raw milk?
raw milk, we have never done raw milk. We have tried camel's milk, didn't see a big enough change to be spending that kind of money on it. Um, for me, Nancy, I think gluten is not good for anybody. And I will just, I have a really bold statement on that. I really do. I don't think it's good for anybody. For anybody that is watching and isn't aware, gluten in our country is sprayed with glyphosate. And glyphosate is known to cause cancer. And there's a direct connection with it. But all of our gluten crops are sprayed with it. So whether you have autism or an autoimmune diagnosis or anything else, or whether you have like no diagnosis, it's not going to be good for you. It's not going to do, our bodies aren't made to ingest that type of poison on a daily basis. So I have people that will say, well, I don't eat a lot of gluten. Well, what do you eat? Well, just, a sandwich every day. And listen, my one of my other sons, that's what he was doing. That wasn't him saying that, but that's what we were doing because we thought he was okay. Well, it turned out he has a huge sensitivity to gluten, almost celiac. And part of what happens with gluten is people don't really know how they're reacting to gluten until they go off of it a lot of times.
Right.
Because gluten can stay in your body. I mean, I've seen like 4 to 6 weeks, like it can stay in your body. So one bite of gluten. Um,
I didn't know that, by the way.
yeah.
That's new to me.
So it stays in your body. Dairy is going to drink is going to be removed a little faster. But for me, depending on depending on the situation. So I work here. Back to your question. So I
Wait. I'm
sorry.
sorry. I might a little bit more about the cheese.
Yeah.
So there are some cheese products that have gluten in them too. That was something I only recently discovered, like in the last 2 months.
Cheese products. What do you mean by cheese
I
products?
think processed cheese.
Yeah, well, processed cheese is the worst. If you're gonna do cheese, if you're gonna do cheese, do raw dairy. It doesn't mean it's like raw, but like it'll say raw on it. But again, for a large majority of the population, cannot tolerate cheese. So whether it's, and how do you know if you can tolerate cheese or not? Take it out and then put it back in. But also, some people, I think what happens a lot, Nancy, is that we live with these symptoms for so long that we don't realize something we're eating is causing it. So, maybe you get bloated after you eat cheese, or maybe you get gassy, or maybe your face looks a little flushed, or you notice your nose gets a little runny. Those are all signs that your body is not tolerating cheese well.
And I have to say, it's really hard to give up. Like my daughter, she definitely, she's got some anxiety issues.
Yep.
And, she's in college. And before she leaves, so I recently moved down to Florida. I was worried about all of her student loan debt, got a house here, and she's living with me. And, typical snack she'll grab on the way to school is a cheese stick,
Yep.
right? And, I'm thinking about how I'm going to convince her to try going off of this. I guess I have to have replacements, but it's hard. It's really hard for, kids that are in school that need a healthy snack. And, none of these colleges offer organic food and they're expensive. Her cafeteria at her school, to go for lunch, it's $20.
That's a lot.
$20. Now, there's a whole salad bar and there's all these desserts. So she packs, food here and takes it, but we can talk a little bit later about some good meal replacements or snack replacements. She does already eat a lot of fruit. Yeah, she always grabs an apple or a banana every day. Yeah, she's got some good habits. And before she came to college, like she didn't eat any of that stuff. But, she's an adult now. So it's also that how do you like do that carrot to get them? And she eats carrots, like she'll grab a couple of carrots. So she's got a good foundation, but I'm thinking about the cheese thing and, like how could that possibly be affecting her,
The other way, and I hear what you're saying. It once they're adults, it is harder. And what sometimes has to happen is they have to get frustrated enough with how they feel to make the change. The other thing I forgot to say about dairy, that's like one of the biggest things is your skin. Like, is your skin breaking out? Like,
she doesn't have those issues.
so if
So
you have like skin issues, blah, blah, blah. So some people can tolerate it. I mean, some people can tolerate it, but there are things to watch for if your body does not like dairy. Again, like it's a skin issues. You could have flushing, runny nose. You could, be gassy, bloated, your joints hurt, just a lot of the same things that might happen with gluten. But dairy, I think you get a more like acute response. Like I just feel like, and it just depends on the person. So what I do now is I have a program called the Kitchen Reset. And what I do is I help the person who wants to clean up their diet, feel better, but they feel overwhelmed and they're not sure where to start. So I have a whole program where I help we first go over what your goals are and what you're willing to do. And once I hear what your goals are, and if somebody tells me, like we'll go back to dairy. If somebody tells me, my child is eating this and then she feels terrible after, well, maybe we start with removing dairy. That's an easy one. So once
right.
I hear your story, I can figure out, okay, where do we need to start and what are you willing to do? I worked with a mom recently who her big goal was removing food dyes, which is great, fabulous, fabulous, fabulous. Remove those food dyes because things are happening in this country, but they're not happening fast enough, and so we have to take control of what we're doing. In part of the program, I help you learn to read your labels. I help you learn what is actually in your food that you're bringing home. And for people that want to remove gluten, people are often shocked at the foods that are where gluten is hiding. And so we do that. And then we go through your pantry, we go through your refrigerator, we go through your freezer. And then we talk about replacements. Okay, what can you have instead of this? Like what can you do instead of this? And then I help you make meals more simple. So, none of us have a lot of time and we don't want to spend a lot of time in the kitchen. So how can we make that simpler? So then that's where I come in. I hold your hand. I encourage you. I support you because I'm a mom who has done this myself. And I'm going to help you make those changes, no matter what they are. I mean, I'll go back to gluten. I think everybody should be gluten free. If you and your family can't do that now, that's fine. Tell me what you want to do and we're going to do that. So that's what I do. I help people. And if it's somebody, I have some autism moms that have come to me recently and said, we did it in the past. I just need help getting back started. So then I offer like an individual one-on-one, just a session, not if you don't need the whole kitchen reset.
And I do think, like for me, um, if it's not here, I'm not going to go out to the store and buy something I shouldn't eat. So, I make sure that my pantry is clean.
Good for you.
Yeah, I don't, and I've been doing this for a long time. I don't want to be tempted. Now, I'm not saying I have a perfect diet. As you know, I've been living with a lot of pain over the last couple of years, and over the summer, it was so bad I couldn't even get out of bed. Like I had one position I could get into, and that was it. And I had to put a TENS unit to actually block the pain signal. And the combination is what got me through almost the entire summer. It was so bad. So I found that maybe I started eating more sandwiches and stuff like that. I pick a very good brand, but not as good. And, I'm like probably 75 to 80% improved.
Yeah.
but it's still like I have date like I think told you like a couple days ago it was really bad, like I had this flare up and I had a mozzarella stick because like to me cheese doesn't seem to bother me, but now talking to you I'm like really rethinking like, maybe I should give everything up. And I want to tell you back in 2000 I did this chiropractic nutritionist program. The guy who taught it was way above his time, like well before his time. He was talking about paleo diets before paleo had a name, you know?
Mhm.
So I did a year-long program with him for 2 years. I totally removed gluten, dairy, sugar. I cleaned up my diet. And I have to tell you, I never felt better. And then, a couple years later, I had a child and she wouldn't let me sleep for more than an hour and a half. And I had her at the age of 45. I can give you a million excuses, but it was hard. And I was working full time as a chiropractor. So, I find that when I'm tired and when I'm exhausted, it's harder to be, really good on what I eat. But on the other hand, that feeds it. It becomes like a vicious cycle.
Yeah. Yeah.
So the more I eat that crap, the worse I feel, the less
Yeah.
motivated I am to stand and, do what I need to do to prepare a good meal. Like right now, like for 2 days, I've had sweet potatoes, ready to make a soup out of. And okay, today's the day I'm going to do it.
I know. And it is, I mean, some of us have more stress and things that we have to deal with, right? And so it is, let's not like forget that it is work. It is work. But I think of it as it is work to make, it's just as much work to make a non healthy meal that it is to make a healthy meal. Like it is still work. You're still in the kitchen.
Yeah.
So if you can like make even small improvements and just switch out some ingredients, you're going to feel better. Your family's going to feel better. Um, and it is, I mean, in the end, it is worth it. But yes, when we're tired, it can be harder to do the things that are good for us, right?
Yeah. And I'm the only one who does the cooking. So, yeah, so it can be hard. So, what do you think about sourdough? Looks like you have mixed feelings about that one.
It's not gluten free.
Right.
I think it's a better for you bread. To be honest, I've never tried it.
Okay.
I think for me, our family has too many things going on. And I think, we just, we're on the road to getting healthy, but when we moved to Florida, we got hit with very, very high levels of toxic mold.
Yeah.
And that like wrecks your body,
Yeah.
wrecks your body. So I don't know that we will ever be at the place for that. And I'm not dying to do it. There's nothing against it. I mean, listen, it's healthier than regular bread, but I don't know. There might, I mean, I think too, it is important with some of this, like every body is so individual, but there's also things that, we know as a whole are not going to do us any favors,
Yeah.
foods that we eat as a whole. So that's my thought.
Yeah. So, you mentioned you have, like, you were talking about how most people don't realize where gluten is hiding. And, for sure bread, pasta. Can you give our listeners like, some other places where gluten is hiding that maybe we weren't aware of?
One of the biggest ones is soy sauce.
Okay.
Soy sauce is one of the biggest ones. And any sort of packaged goods, granola bars, I cleaned out the kitchen with one mom and she was surprised that there was, gluten in the granola bar. Where there is a very high possibility of gluten is actually in oats. And you got to be real careful with oats. If you're going to eat oats, which I used to I used to eat oats and now as I've learned more, I'm not a huge fan of oats anymore. You want to make sure they're certified gluten free, but even if they're certified gluten free, people can still react to them. So you just want to be cautious with oats, but anything packaged, that's why you got to read your labels. Crackers, of course, cookies, anything baked goods, but then the soy sauce, the condiments, um, you know, your best bet is always going to be buy foods without a label. But
Right.
but we all buy foods in a package sometimes because, you know, most of us have packaged goods in our house, and that's okay. But what we can do is make better choices with the packaged foods that we bring into our house. The less ingredients, the better.
Yeah, so I swapped out tamari. I mean, I
Mm-hmm.
swapped out soy sauce for tamari, right?
Mm-hmm.
Years ago. And but again, how is that affecting me? I don't use it that often, but I will never like, again, I might buy sushi, right? So I think it's pretty good, but then you have the issue of the rice and arsenic, and it gets a little frustrating sometimes just trying to
It
find
can.
foods to, suit your palate, but also stay healthy. So I do have a question for you about some pastas. So there's a pasta that's made out of cassava. I think that's
Yep.
how you say that.
Cassava flour. Mm-hmm.
What do you think about that?
That is, we don't have pasta very much just because there's not a lot of nutrition in pasta. If we do, we would get one with cassava flour. I want to go back and give you a little tip for substituting tamari or soy sauce. Have you ever done coconut aminos?
I have.
Okay, coconut aminos is a good replacement. Just make sure that coconut aminos doesn't have soy in it. But that's a really good replacement too for soy sauce. Does it taste the same? No. But um, tell me again, what was your question after that? Because I wanted to tell you
Oh,
that.
I forget. Oh, the pasta, the
The pasta, yeah.
cassava.
Cassava flour. Yep. Again, pasta, like we try not to do that very often. If I do, I actually have a casserole that I make with cassava flour pasta, broccoli, ground beef, grass-fed ground beef, seasonings, and tomato sauce that, kind of hits all of those food groups. And we'll put that together. We'll do that.
Yeah, so growing up, we had a dish that my mother would make called American chop suey. It's not
Oh,
Chinese. I don't know where she came up with that name or if it was a friend who gave her the recipe, but it was something that we ate pretty regularly. And it has ground beef and onions and mushrooms, and you saute them, and then you put some tomato sauce in, and then macaroni. You bake it, and then you top it with cheese. So a couple years ago I started substituting the macaroni for cubed zucchini that I would cook
oh,
because I felt like it needed something, another dimension to it, you
yeah.
know? Um, as I said, this summer has been tough, so I actually have started, doing the pasta again, but we'll only buy the pasta from Italy because they don't spray with glyphosate like we do here. So,
Yep.
I may do it occasionally, but I'm careful about what I choose. And then the other thing that was a really big disappointment is we were eating that Banza chickpea flour
Yep.
pasta, and then Zen Honeycutt did this report about chickpeas being loaded with glyphosate, which I have to tell you, I was depressed for like a week. I mean, I had like 5 boxes of it in my cupboard, because we all like to eat, pasta occasionally. So, yeah, so that was a big disappointment. But, so glyphosate is a huge issue.
It is. It is. And I mean, the other thing too, I think when people come out and say, this is loaded with this is loaded with that, um, I think you have to also, for some things, take things with a grain of salt and like, because you don't want to like make yourself crazy. If you want to have sushi every now and then, have sushi. I mean, it just depends on what's going on with your health, what's going on with your body. I don't feel that way about gluten. I'm not like, oh, have some gluten every now and then. Depending on the person, some people cannot at all. But I don't think it's a habit to get into, like with, having gluten every week or every month or, anything like that. But I do think that we also need to not make ourselves crazy. As I just had some hummus and carrots before we came on this call with chickpeas. So, they come out with stuff about protein powders that they have lead, and the huge chocolate that I eat has lead. And I just think some of the stuff we can't avoid, and we don't want to make ourselves crazy. So it's also, I think there's some nuance there. It's like, focus on the big things and like, how are you feeling? Are you feeling better? Do you have more energy? Is your skin better? Are you less bloated? Do your joints feel better? Like all of those things. Are you sleeping better? And focus on those things and then decide what you can live with and what you can live without, especially when they're quote unquote in the healthy food department. Does that make
You,
sense?
yeah, and the truth is once you start noticing a difference, you're going to be able to make other changes. Like, I haven't been practicing for a few years, but when I was, if I had somebody that I felt like I needed to talk to nutritionally, for instance, let's say they liked eating their ice cream, I'd like,
Yes,
well, let's try eating fruit instead. Like my daughter had no sugar until she was probably about 4 years old.
that's awesome.
Yeah, so everything was, blueberries and, everything was nature's candy. It was tough though when she was in school and going to birthday parties, right? And there would be this junk. And I had taught her about not doing it, so she really didn't do it. But then, like, my mother was babysitting, I mean, my mother just
Grandma,
she just couldn't get it, and it didn't like, and that's a whole story in itself. I could tell you my whole
sure.
breastfeeding journey when my mother was
I'm
around
sure.
when after my daughter was born. I mean, it was crazy, but you know, it was hard because we know how bad sugar is. So, like, what would you say? I'm going to ask you to give us five things, right? Five things. So I think most of the issues a lot of kids have are gut related, which is going to affect the brain, cause anxiety, maybe sleep issue, hyperactivity, right? All that stuff we know is connected. So, like, so you're saying right now, and I realize that you're still, it's customizable depending upon who the person is. The number one thing that you're going to get people to remove is gluten.
That is my preference. But if it's not somebody else's preference, then we don't do that.
Yeah,
It's really, what do you want to do? It's always my recommendation.
right.
It's always my recommendation. I think that's the thing that I think um, is one of the most important things. I think also if you're eating a lot of food dyes, I mean that's up there too. I mean
Right.
it depends on the family. Like what are you eating now? I mean if the diet is loaded with food dyes, then that may be step one. Because that's typically easier. It's typically easier to get the food dyes out because that's a lot of the junk anyways, and it's not real food. Because you could be eating real food that has a lot of gluten in it. So
Right.
I mean, food dyes, depending on the family and the person, could be top priority. A lot of people that will come to me have already removed the food dyes, but some haven't. So I would say gluten and food dyes are kind of like my top, where to start at the top with what to remove.
So food dyes, gluten, dairy, sugar, probably the top. And if they remove the processed foods, they're probably getting rid of most of the sugar. And that's the other problem with gluten-free products. So, I remember when I first went gluten-free, I don't know how many years ago it was. And I'm just buying the packaged products like right off the shelf. I had no idea. Like they were organic products. They're like I'm buying it at the local food co-op. So I didn't think I needed to read the labels. And then I remember one day looking at the labels, and I'm like, oh, like the first or second ingredient was sugar.
Yeah, yeah. Well, that's why too, like it's so important to read your labels. It's so important. Like you have to read your labels. If you want to be healthy, you got to read your labels. You got to know what you're bringing in. And I don't really say sugar because when you start removing the artificial food dyes, you're going to bring your sugar level down because probably the stuff that's in the food dyes has a lot of sugar and it's a lot of junk a lot of the times. So it's not that I'm not saying eat all the sugar you want, but I think a bigger priority to remove is corn because
Right.
corn can be extremely inflammatory. For me, gluten, dairy, corn, soy, and food coloring are like the top five for me. Um, I don't mention sugar, not because it's not important, but also let's see what your sugar intake is because when you have cleaned up your diet, your sugar intake is probably going to be low because you can't eat the candy and the junk that you were eating because it has the other things in it. It has the food dyes, the gluten. And so it's not that sugar isn't an issue. It's just I find the other pieces are more important just in terms of long-term health. And yes, we tweak the sugar if needed. Um, and even, I mean, a lot of kids with autism, they'll eat too much fruit. And then if they eat too much fruit, what happens? They get yeasty, and they eat too much yeast, and then they get the uncontrollable laughter, the giggles. They get the giggles, which a lot of parents, until you don't know, you just think, excuse me, you just think, why is my child like acting like they're drunk? Because when you have too much sugar and your body's converting into yeast, it is kind of like you're drunk.
Right.
So for my son with autism, I do about two fruits a day, and it's usually blueberries and a pear.
Right.
Does he have some things other here and there? Yeah, but we keep even natural sugar low for him. So to answer your question, sugar is a very important piece, but I feel the other ones we gotta focus on also. Like those are like the top ones because sugar, when you say sugar, it's also, Nancy, like, well, what kind of sugar are we talking about? Are we talking about honey? Are we talking about maple syrup? And how much are you having? And so I think there's some nuance there.
Right. Yeah, and I'm talking about high fructose corn
Oh,
syrup.
yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah, no, we don't. That's
that's
where the
bad.
label reading, like, we don't want any of that. We don't want the seed oils. We don't want the canola oil, that kind of stuff. And that's what I do. And when I help people learn to read the labels.
Yeah. And then the other piece, of course, is MSG, right? So in the old days, they used to call it MSG, and then at some point they decided to get tricky and call it natural flavoring, right? And I know MSG can definitely be inflammatory for some people, but I guess, one of the questions I have for you with your program, the Kitchen Reset, is do you also offer any kind of recipes? Like, are people subscribing to your program, or are they just like, is it a course, or can you tell us a little bit more about what that looks like?
So the kitchen reset is very personalized. So that's one of the things I've talked about is what is it that you're wanting to do and what is it that you're willing to do? Tell me what your goals are. What are you willing to do? And then we talk about the obstacles. So you're not getting videos that I send to everybody. You're not getting, things sent to you that I send to everybody. It's one-on-one. It is one-on-one. We are working together. If you tell me, hey, I need ideas for snacks. My kid is eating this and he wants, I don't want him eating that. I want him to, eat more healthy. I will send you ideas. Um, if you need help with recipes, I will send you recipes. It's really whatever you need. Whatever you need, I will give you what I have to offer. And if I don't know the answer, I will figure that out. So I have the staples in my house. I teach people also how to cook for your whole family so that you're not cooking separate meals. How do I modify for my son with autism? He doesn't ever eat any tomatoes. I don't give him tomatoes. He doesn't eat any sauces. He will just eat olive oil or straight fats. I keep him very, very basic. And so I teach people how to modify that and make a meal for the whole family, but modify it for your kid who needs more modification.
Right, right. Well, if you put together a meal that's good for your son, then you can say, okay, well, if you want to like add ketchup or, you know what I'm saying? Like, here are things that you can add to, for everybody else if they want it. But yeah, because that is a problem. I know that I've met people over the years where they had kids or, family members with different sensitivities, and it became really challenging for them. For the parent, whoever was doing the
Right,
cooking, and
right,
wanting to make sure everybody ate healthy, but it can be very frustrating. I think having a list of, what are some good substitutes handy, but it still needs to be individualized too,
right,
because, like my daughter, she's okay with tomatoes now, but when she was a kid, she definitely had a problem with strawberries and tomatoes. And for me, as the parent cooking, that was a huge problem because I'm Jewish, but I cooked a lot of Italian food, like everything had, tomato sauce. And all of a sudden I was like, oh my God, like I'd say 6 out of 7 meals, dinners had tomato sauce. And I just stopped cooking. Like, my husband took over and he would just like cook some steaks on the grill and we'd have a baked potato and salad, but I stopped cooking because it was so challenging. Because I'm not naturally a cook. It definitely, for me, it's not easy. I and
we had to do low histamine. We've been low histamine since the mold. And tomatoes are very high histamine for those who don't know. Um, and so are all your condiments, your vinegars. And so it can be very challenging, especially when you have someone with more severe sensitivities and more sensitivities. So I hear you. Yeah. For a while, I made chili with no tomatoes. It's definitely not as good.
yeah, I did find, so as you know, we recently moved down to Florida. But I had found in this one store I would shop in, they had a gravy that was like had amazing ingredients in it. And I wish I could remember the name of it. And I have not been able to find that since I came down here because, like the American chop suey, I started putting this gravy in it instead of the tomato sauce. And, I mean, tomato sauce is wonderful, but it was definitely good enough that we were all happy. So I have to make an effort to find that gravy, even if I have to order it online.
Yeah.
The other thing I think for me, and I think like just finding like a cooking class online, somebody who would, maybe once a month or once a week or twice a month come on and say, okay, here's a recipe, or maybe even just like put it in an email newsletter. Like I was able to take this recipe and make it healthier. So that's like one of the things I do every now and then. I'll cook something and I'll post it online and here are the ingredients and just to give people ideas just because we get bored eating the same things all the time.
We do. We do get bored eating the same things all the time. It's funny because I'm like, okay, a lot of us eat the same thing for breakfast and eat the same thing for lunch, but like dinner has to be always different. And it's
Right.
funny how we're like that. It's weird because I don't mind eating the same thing for breakfast and lunch most days, but like dinner is like the thing. And so what I do is whenever I do something new or different, I will share in my stories on social media what I'm doing because my gift is not recipes. And I usually don't measure and I kind of make things up. And so if I find something that works, like I've tried a couple new recipes lately, I'll post them in my stories and I'll share that. But yeah, the cooking and the recipes isn't my gift, although I have learned and I have my staples and I've learned to be creative.
Yeah, I recently asked you for a recipe. I know you posted it. So if somebody wanted to schedule an appointment, do you have a website or do they just need to,
I do
email?
not have a website. You can contact me through Instagram or Facebook, and we can go from there. You can. My inbox is open.
So do you have I know you have a personal profile. Do you have a professional or do you have a page or group?
Nope, it's Lisa Sobel Katz on both Instagram and Facebook. I post a lot more on Instagram than I do on Facebook.
That's good
So,
to know
yeah, yeah.
because I don't think I follow you on Instagram. So what I'll do is I'll post your links after I put this up on YouTube so people can find you. And any last parting message or words?
No, but what I would like to do is for any of your listeners that want to get the kitchen reset package, if you feel like you need help from, setting your goals, support, learning what to have in your kitchen, what to throw out, and making the changes. For anybody that wants to do the kitchen reset package, I'm going to offer, if you let me know that Nancy referred you, I will offer $50 off the package.
Wonderful. That's fantastic. And I want to thank you again. And I think I want to just reiterate that you don't just work with people with, family member with autism. You can help with any kind of chronic health
Yep.
problem.
Yep.
So I just want to
Yes.
reiterate that because, autoimmune, you've gotten rid of two autoimmune diseases, which is incredible in itself. And, there are a lot of people out there that are suffering. And
Yeah.
I want people to know about you, have access to you, and just see more people become healthier. So thank you.
You're welcome. And one, you asked what I would leave people with. I would leave people with this. And this is one thing like we kind of jumped right in. What you eat matters. Don't let anybody tell you otherwise. Food food either has the power to hurt us or heal us. And I want people to know that amazing things can happen when you give your body the right things, when you don't um, when you love your body and when you love your body enough to feed it the foods that it needs and it wants. And don't let anybody tell you that diet doesn't matter because I think that happens all too much, especially in our modernized medicine society, for people that just don't understand what can happen when people take out inflammatory foods. And inflammation is something that we all have to combat, just from the air that we breathe, the foods that we eat, the water we drink. Even if we eat the healthiest and the cleanest and do all the right things, we need to be very mindful of what we're putting in our body on a daily basis. And I want to empower people to know that there is hope. You can feel better. You don't have to, deal with all of your aches and pains and ailments. And there is hope. There's a lot of hope, and it can start with what you're eating every day.
And I think that just to add on to that, a couple things. One is there's no one size fits all, and to remember that. Number two is be patient and, you
Yeah.
know, don't badger yourself if you are doing really well and following things and you're feeling great and then you slip, just jump
Yeah.
right back on.
Yeah.
Because, we all have different struggles and, just give yourself some grace, I guess is what I'm trying to say. Like
Yep.
don't be
There's
hard on
no need
yourself.
to be perfect. There's no need to be perfect. But love yourself enough to make the changes.
We'll end on that. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Nancy.